When I asked about my son's wedding, I didn't expect my daughter-in-law's answer to change everything I thought I knew about family. That was the moment my hands started to tremble, not from anger, but from the kind of quiet disbelief that makes your bones feel hollow. I still remember the way the phone felt heavy in my palm, the faint hum of the refrigerator filling the silence as she spoke. Her voice was soft, polite even, but behind every word was something cold, something final. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Margaret, though most folks around town just call me Maggie. I'm 57, retired from teaching middle school English, and living alone in the little blue-gray house on the corner of Maple and 3rd. My husband, Harold, passed away 5 years ago, heart attack, and since then, I've built a life around quiet routines, tending to my garden, morning coffee on the porch, and Sunday dinners with my son Ethan. Whenever he can make it, Ethan's my only child, the kind of boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and call them flowers from my favorite lady. He grew up thoughtful, reliable, a good man, even when life pulled him in directions I didn't always understand. After Harold died, it was Ethan who came by every week to fix the porch light or shovel the driveway, making sure I never felt too alone. When he told me 3 years ago that he'd met someone, a young woman named Rachel, I could see a light in him I hadn't seen since his father's funeral. He was smiling more, talking faster, laughing in that unguarded way people do when they're finally happy again. I'll admit, I was excited to meet her. Nervous, too. Because what mother isn't when her only son brings home someone who might change everything? The first time Rachel walked into my kitchen, she brought lemon bars. Homemade, she said, though I later noticed the grocery store packaging still tucked under the sink. But that didn't matter. She was polite, pretty, a little shy. Her voice had that practiced warmth, the kind that makes you want to like a person before you know if you actually do. Over the months, she and Ethan became inseparable, and I tried my best to keep up. Dinner invitations, little gifts, careful questions that didn't sound too motherly. Still, there were moments, tiny ones, when I caught her looking at me with something unreadable in her eyes. Not anger, not disdain, just distance. I brushed it off, of course. Young people are different now, I told myself. Maybe she's just shy. Maybe she grew up in one of those families that don't hug. When Ethan called last spring to tell me they were engaged, my heart swelled. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I'd said, clutching the phone like it might run away. "When's the big day?" He hesitated, just for a moment. "We haven't set a date yet, Mom. We're still figuring things out." I didn't think much of it at the time. People take their time planning weddings these days. But then months passed. Summer turned to fall and not a word. No save the dates, no questions about guest lists or family heirlooms. Just silence. Whenever I brought it up, Ethan's answers were vague. "Soon, Mom," or "We're keeping it simple." Still, I trusted him. He'd always been honest with me. Always. Until the day Rachel called. It was a Wednesday afternoon, early October. I remember because the maple tree outside had just turned the color of burnt sugar, and I'd been sitting by the window reading when the phone rang. "Hi, Mrs. Collins," Rachel said. Her voice was light, almost musical. "I just wanted to call and talk about—" "Well, the wedding," my heart fluttered. "Oh, of course, dear. I was just wondering when I should start looking for a dress." There was a pause. A long one. I could hear the faint buzz of city traffic behind her. "Well," she said finally, "that's actually what I wanted to talk about." Something in her tone made me sit straighter. "Is everything all right?" She cleared her throat. "Everything's fine. It's just, we've decided to keep things very small, very private. Actually, we're not really having a wedding." For a second, I thought I'd misheard. "Not having a wedding?" "Right," she said, quick now. "We're just going to do something quiet. Just the two of us. Maybe a courthouse, maybe a beach elopement. We haven't decided. We just don't want the stress, you know?" I tried to laugh it off, to sound understanding. "Oh, well, I suppose that's modern of you. But surely you'll have a little gathering afterward. A family dinner?" Another silence. Then, softly, "We'll see." And that was it. No excitement, no warmth. Just finality. After we hung up, I sat there staring at the phone for a long while. The ticking clock above the stove felt louder than usual. The smell of my overbrewed tea filled the kitchen. Bitter, sharp. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was angry, but because something in Rachel's voice had felt deliberate. Like she wasn't just excluding me from a wedding, she was excluding me from something bigger, something I couldn't name yet. In the days that followed, I tried to convince myself it was fine. People have their reasons. Maybe they couldn't afford a big ceremony. Maybe Rachel's family wanted privacy. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered, "There's more to this, Maggie. You just don't see it yet." And that voice wouldn't let me rest. The morning after Rachel's call, I did what I always do when the world tilts. I cooked. Bacon in a cast-iron skillet, eggs soft scrambled with a dollop of sour cream, and sourdough toast I burned on the first try because my mind was wandering. The kitchen window fogged with a soft film of steam, blurring the yellow mums on the porch. I set a plate at the table out of habit for a second person who wasn't coming. An old rhythm left over from when Harold could stroll in after a walk and say, "Smells like Sunday." I ate 2 bites and put my fork down. The bacon tasted like salt and memory. I pulled out the cedar box from the top shelf of the pantry, the one where I kept keepsakes I didn't trust to the attic, and set it on the table. Inside were little markers of a life. Ethan's kindergarten handprint card, a smooth stone from our first family beach trip to Cape Cod, the lace handkerchief my mother gave me on my wedding day. And tucked into a small envelope, a thin gold chain with a tiny pearl, my something borrowed once. I held the chain up to the light. For when the right day comes, I told myself, tucking it away each year, waiting. I tried to imagine Rachel wearing it. Her dark hair swept back, the pearl shining at her collarbone. I tried to imagine myself pinning a boutonniere on Ethan's lapel, the way I'd pictured in quiet moments. But when I pictured Rachel, I kept hearing her voice. "We're not really having a wedding." I put the chain back in the envelope and closed the box. That afternoon, I walked to the farmer's market, just to put my feet on something steady. The October air had that sweet ache of apples and damp leaves, and a bluegrass duo played near the cider stand, fiddle and a worn guitar that made the air feel warmer than it was. "I ran into Marla from church by the pumpkins," she asked after Ethan, and I told her he was well. I did not mention the call. I didn't trust my voice not to crack on the word elopement. Back home, I picked up the phone twice to call Ethan and set it down twice. When I finally dialed, it went to voicemail. I told myself he was at work. He's a project manager for a tech supply company, the kind of job where your calendar looks like a Tetris board. He called me back after 7. "Hey, Mom?" His voice was upbeat, distracted. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I lied. "I talked to Rachel today." "Oh?" Paper rustled on his end. I imagined him shifting between windows on his laptop, eyes on a spreadsheet. "About what?" "The wedding." I tried to keep my tone light. She said there might not be one. A beat. Then carefully, "We're keeping it small. You know how things get with extended families." "I do," I said. "But I'm not extended." I heard him exhale, a soft, weary sound that pressed a thumbprint on my heart. "It's not about you, Mom. We just want to do this our way. Less pressure." "Of course," I said, nodding to an empty room. "Of course, sweetheart." We talked about the weather and his new office coffee machine after that. And when we hung up, I stood in the dim kitchen and listened to the refrigerator hum again, as if it were the only thing keeping time. For a few weeks, I tried to adjust to this new expectation. No aisles, no toasts, no moment where a mother's eyes find her son's and say all the words that live in the space between "thank you" and "I love you" and "go make a good life." I went about my routines, tutoring 2 afternoons a week at the community center, choir practice on Thursdays, grocery shopping on Tuesdays, where I'd still buy too many bananas and end up baking bread with the extras on Sunday. It was a Thursday when the first real clue arrived, though I didn't understand it as such at the time. I was setting sheet music on the pew when Beth, who runs the church office, waved me over. "Maggie," she said, "you know that event rental company over on Willow? They dropped off an invoice by mistake at the office, addressed to a Collins." I smiled. "We're not the only Collins in town, Beth." "I know, honey. It's just, it had Ethan's company name on it. I figured it was for one of his work events, but the address looked... A personal?" She rummaged in a stack and pulled out a copy, the kind she keeps for the files. I already sent the original back with a note to correct, but I thought you might want to let him know. I took the paper. The invoice listed table linens, a portable arch, 40 Chiavari chairs, string lights, a sound system. The date was for a Saturday, not 2 weeks away. The location? A small vineyard 30 miles north. One of those quiet boutique places with a view of the hills. There, in black ink, client, Ethan Collins, plus Rachel Meyer. For a moment, the choir room blurred around the edges. The paper felt slick in my hand. Looks like a fancy work picnic, Beth said, oblivious, moving on to complain about the copier. I slid the invoice into my purse and smiled as if nothing in the world had shifted, but the note burned through the lining all the way home. That night, I didn't call Ethan. I sat at my table with the invoice and a cup of tea I forgot to sip, watching the steam wisp away. My first thought wasn't suspicion. It was hope. Maybe they'd changed their minds. Maybe they were having a small ceremony after all. 40 chairs isn't many. A vineyard could be beautiful, but why hadn't anyone told me? Why was the invoice at the church and not in my mailbox? I slept fitfully and woke to a text from Ethan at 6:12 a.m., the kind of hour he reserves for airport runs and bad news. Love you, Mom. Busy weekend coming up. Might be off-grid. Don't worry if I'm slow to respond. I stared at the phone until the screen dimmed. Off-grid. I put on my coat and took a walk. The sidewalks were scattered with bronze leaves, and the neighbor's golden retriever pressed a wet nose against my hand. I decided then that I would give Ethan space. Be gracious, not meddle. It's not a mother's job to demand a seat at a table her child is setting for himself. And then Saturday came. The morning was bright and brittle, the kind of October light that makes every shadow precise. I cleaned the house for no reason and made turkey chili and froze half of it, because these are the ways I keep my hands busy when my mind is loud. Around noon, I went to the porch to shake out a rug and heard, faint and drifting on the wind, the distant peal of bells. Not church bells, something lighter, laughter maybe, or wind chimes. I stayed on that porch longer than necessary, watching cars pass, reading details into nothing. When the mail arrived, there was a catalog and a water bill, and a cream-colored envelope I recognized by the return address. Willow Ridge Vineyard. I tore it open with my thumbnail. Inside was a receipt, paid in full. Notes in the margin. Add 4 vegetarian meals. Mother of groom unavailable. Unavailable. I sank onto the porch chair, the wicker groaning, and pressed the paper flat on my knee. My eyes caught on a faint coffee ring in the corner, as if someone had rested a mug on the counter while discussing me like a logistical hiccup. I don't know how long I sat there, but by the time I went inside, the light had shifted to late afternoon. I made tea again, because in my house sorrow always comes with tea, and I stood by the sink watching a squirrel hop along the fence, a leaf stuck comically to its back. And just like that, the ache in my chest sharpened into something else. Not anger, not yet. A need to know. To see with my own eyes the thing I was being asked to accept from a distance. I changed into a navy sweater and my good jeans, the ones that make me feel put together, and I put the pearl chain in my pocket, not to give, just to hold. I told myself I was only going for a drive. The vineyard was public after all. People go for tastings all the time. I could sit in the parking lot, watch the sun fold itself over the hills, and drive home. No harm done. The road north took me along the river, past a row of maples flaming like lit candles. I kept the radio low, an old soul station murmuring about love that lasts. At mile marker 22, a nervousness started in my hands, so I pulled into a gas station and bought a bottle of water I didn't drink. The cashier stamped the receipt and said, "You heading anywhere nice?" I smiled like any other woman with errands and said, "Just a bit of fresh air." When I turned onto the gravel drive of Willow Ridge, the sun was an hour from the horizon. The vines draped in rows like green cords, and a white tent rose in the meadow, its edges catching the light. I could see lanterns strung from pole to pole, flickering on as the evening deepened. A trio of musicians tuned beneath the tent. A violin moaned. A guitar plucked a thoughtful run. I parked far enough to be nobody but close enough to see. People moved beneath the canvas with that careful energy of a rehearsal or a beginning. I caught sight of a florist carrying a bouquet of white ranunculus and eucalyptus. Someone laughed, a warm, rising sound, and the laugh caught on the breeze like a ribbon. Then, by the archway twined with ivy, I saw my son. Ethan, in a charcoal suit. He looked more handsome than he had since his father's memorial, eyes bright in the fading light. He was happy. The truth of it landed in me with both tenderness and hurt. He turned, and that was when I saw Rachel, a white dress. Not elaborate, simple, modern, the kind of dress that says, "I know who I am." Her hair in a low bun, a few soft strands escaping to kiss her cheek. She was holding a bouquet I recognized from a bridal magazine cover. Yes, I'd allowed myself those. Blush roses tucked into white blooms like secrets. In that breath, the air left my body. Not because she was beautiful, but because in one glance, I knew this wasn't a tasting or a rehearsal or anything that included me. This was their wedding, and I was, by their design, watching from the edges like an uninvited ghost. Behind them, a small cluster of people gathered, a set of older adults I didn't know, a young couple I'd seen tagged in Ethan's photos, and a woman with Rachel's eyes who touched her daughter's elbow with the kind of love that arrives early and never leaves. I pressed my fingers to the pearl in my pocket. I told myself I'd sit for 5 minutes, then go. I told myself I'd choose dignity over disruption. I told myself 100 small things a mother tells herself to survive the moment when her child builds a life that forgets to set a place for her. And then I heard Rachel laugh again, tilting her head toward a woman beside her, the planner. Maybe, and say clear enough to carry, we're just relieved it's uncomplicated, no drama, no guilt trips, the planner nodded, murmuring something I couldn't catch. Rachel added, softer but still audible, we had to make sure she wouldn't come. The world went so quiet, my heartbeat sounded like footsteps on a hard floor. I had my first clear thought since the invoice. This wasn't an oversight. This was a choice. And somewhere between the white tent and the spare seat in my car, a seed of resolve took root. I didn't know what to do with it yet. I only knew I couldn't pretend I hadn't heard. I started the engine, the sound too loud in the hush, and watched as 2 heads turned. Ethan glanced toward the lot with a flicker of recognition, like he sensed a shift in the air but couldn't name it. Rachel didn't look. She looped her arm through his and leaned in, whispering something that made his mouth lift on one side, the way it does when he's trying not to smile too big. I put the car in reverse, my throat thick, and drove back down the gravel drive, every stone popping under the tires like punctuation. At the end of the lane, I pulled over, put my forehead to the steering wheel, and let the first tears come. Not the bitter kind, but the clean kind you cry when a truth finally stops hiding. I wiped my face, sat up straight and looked at the road home, and I knew 2 things. I would not crash their wedding, and I would not let this story be written without my voice. I drove back to town with the same radio station humming. My mind quiet now, my chest filled with a steady, new resolve that felt like the first calm breath after a storm. When I walked into my house, the last of the sun slid across the dining room table, turning the cedar box into a small golden island. I placed the pearl chain on top of it. Not a gift denied, I told myself, just a gift delayed. And then I picked up the phone. I didn't call Ethan that night. I wanted to, but I knew if I did, my voice would shake, and I didn't want him to hear me like that. Instead, I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat by the window, watching the headlights of passing cars cut through the dark. Every few minutes I'd glance at my phone, half hoping for a message, half dreading it. None came. By Sunday morning, the air outside had that crisp, new quality that only comes after a night of quiet rain. The world smelled like wet leaves and earth, and for a brief moment I felt almost peaceful until I saw the photo. I wasn't looking for it. I had opened Facebook to check the church page, scrolling past recipes and cat videos, when I saw a familiar name in the People You May Know column, Rachel Meyer. The profile picture had changed. It was new. I froze. There she was, smiling, standing in a field under a white tent. Ethan beside her, hand around her waist. both of them radiant. The caption read simply, "We did it. Forever starts here." A flood of likes, comments, and heart emojis trailed beneath it. "Congratulations! So beautiful. You two are perfect. Perfect." I stared at the photo until my eyes blurred. I zoomed in on Ethan's smile, real, bright, untouched by guilt. Then Rachel's eyes, the same calm distance I'd felt on the phone. The white dress, the bouquet, the vineyard lanterns glowing behind them. My hands trembled. They hadn't told me. Not only that, they had made sure I wouldn't find out until it was done. Mother of groom unavailable. That note wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. I closed the app, turned off my phone, and sat still for what felt like hours. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that hums. I thought about every moment leading up to this, every small lie disguised as kindness, every "soon, Mom," and "don't worry about it." It all lined up now, like pieces of a cruel puzzle. When I finally turned my phone back on, there was one message. From Ethan. "Hey Mom, just wanted to let you know we did a small ceremony yesterday. We wanted something simple, just us and a few close friends. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? Love you, just like that. As if love could patch over being erased, I didn't reply. That night, I walked into the living room and stared at the photos on the mantel. Ethan at his high school graduation, Harold holding him as a baby, our family at the lake the summer before Harold's heart gave out. I traced the edge of a frame with my thumb and whispered, "What did I do wrong?" The house didn't answer. The next day, true to his word, Ethan called. I didn't pick up at first, but he kept calling, twice, then 3 times. Finally, I answered, "Mom?" His voice was gentle, cautious. "I saw the photo," I said quietly. A pause. "Oh, that's all you have to say?" He sighed. "Mom, we weren't trying to hurt you. Rachel she gets anxious about big family things. We wanted it to be simple." "Simple?" My voice cracked. "You mean secret?" "No," he said quickly. "Not secret. Private. Private is when you don't post it online for strangers to see before your own mother." He went quiet. I could hear traffic in the background, maybe the sound of a car door closing. "Mom, please don't make this harder than it needs to be." I laughed, soft and bitter. "You think I'm making it hard? You got married without me, Ethan. You made me an afterthought." "Don't say that," he said, his tone rising for the first time. "You know that's not true. You're my mom. I love you. But Rachel, she's my wife now. I had to think about her feelings, too." "Did you ever think about mine?" "Silence, Ethan," I said, quieter now. "Did she tell you not to invite me?" He hesitated. "It wasn't like that." "So she did." "No, she just, Mom, you have a strong personality. She was worried you'd take over things." I felt something twist inside me. Take over? "Ethan, all I wanted was to be there, to see my son start his life." "I know," he said, softer now. "But she wanted peace. She's been through a lot with her own family, and she said she needed to do this her way." I agreed. "I thought you'd understand." "Understand." The word felt like an insult. I swallowed hard. "I would have if you'd told me." "But you didn't, Ethan. You hid it." "That's not peace, that's cowardice." He didn't answer. Then finally he said, "I'm sorry, Mom, I really am. We'll have a dinner soon, just us. You'll meet her family and we'll celebrate together, okay?" Celebrate! I wanted to scream, to tell him that what he'd taken from me wasn't something a dinner could replace. But I just said, "Fine, let me know when," and hung up. Afterward, I sat on the couch and let the tears come again, not sharp like before, but heavy, slow. They didn't feel like grief. They felt like understanding, like a wound that finally knows its shape. The next few days, I moved through the house like someone underwater. I watered the plants, folded laundry, went to the market. People at church congratulated me on the big day because they'd seen it online. I smiled politely and changed the subject, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rachel's calm, satisfied expression under that white tent, and heard her voice again. We had to make sure she wouldn't come. It echoed through me, over and over until it stopped hurting and started hardening. By Thursday, I decided something. I couldn't undo what had been done, but I could learn why. Not from Ethan. He was too tangled in love and loyalty to see clearly. From Rachel herself, so I sent her a message. "Rachel, congratulations to you both. I hope you're settling in. When things calm down, I'd love to have a chat." Maybe coffee? Just the two of us. No pressure. I stared at the screen for 5 minutes before hitting send. She replied 15 minutes later. Hi, Mrs. Collins. Thanks. Sure, maybe next week. I'll check my schedule. Polite. Cool. Distant. As always. But it was enough. When I put the phone down, I looked around my quiet little kitchen and felt something shift inside me. Not spite, not revenge, just clarity. I didn't want to ruin her marriage. I didn't want to fight for attention. I just wanted the truth. And deep down, I had a feeling Rachel had been waiting for me to ask. The following Monday, the world looked ordinary again. Too ordinary, like it hadn't noticed my heart had been rearranged. The mailman waved. The neighbor's dog barked at the same squirrel. Life carried on, as if nothing had changed. But inside me, something had. I woke early, made coffee, and reread Rachel's short message. Polite, detached, wrapped in the kind of civility people use when they don't want to be caught showing their true face. I stared at it until the steam from my cup faded to nothing. Next week, she'd said. I didn't want to wait that long. By Wednesday, I wrote again. Hey, Rachel, just checking in. Would Thursday morning work for coffee? The little cafe by the square, 10 a.m.? Her reply came quickly. Sure, that's fine. No emoji, no exclamation, no warmth. Just fine. That Thursday, I got there early. The cafe smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, the kind of comforting scent that usually makes strangers talk softer. I picked a corner table facing the window and ordered 2 coffees. 1 black, 1 latte, not sure which she preferred. When Rachel arrived, she looked effortlessly put together. Beige coat, dark hair tucked neatly behind her ears, a small diamond glinting on her hand. She greeted me with a careful smile. Mrs. Collins, she said. Please, I replied. Call me Maggie, she nodded, sitting down across from me, posture straight as a rule. There was a small silence before she reached for the latte. You didn't have to buy me coffee. I wanted to, I said. It's the least I could do for my new daughter-in-law. Her lips curved faintly. That's kind of you. I studied her face for a moment, not to intimidate, but to understand. She was beautiful, yes, but not the kind of beauty that seeks attention. There was control in her, the kind of woman who measures every word before she lets it out. I won't take much of your time, I said gently. I just wanted to talk. Woman to woman, she stirred her coffee slowly, the spoon clinking against porcelain. Of course, I took a breath. I saw the pictures. Her hand paused mid-stir, then continued, calm as ever. I figured you might. And the invoice, I added softly. The one sent to the church by mistake. She looked up, eyes steady. Then I suppose you know everything. Not everything, I said. Just enough to know I wasn't meant to. For the first time, a flicker of discomfort crossed her face. She set the spoon down, wiped her hands on a napkin and said, I didn't mean to hurt you. Didn't you? Her jaw tightened. No, I just wanted things to be peaceful, simple. Peaceful doesn't mean erasing people, Rachel. Her eyes met mine, cool, assessing. You and Ethan have a close relationship. I respect that. But sometimes close can feel like control. He felt it. I felt it. Control? I repeated, the word like a pebble in my shoe. Because I asked about your wedding? Because you asked about everything, she said quietly. What color the bridesmaids might wear, whether you should bake the cake, who to invite. I know you meant well, but it felt like you wanted it to be your day too. I let that sit for a moment. Maybe she was right in part. Maybe I'd wanted to help too much, to fill the space Harold's absence left, to be useful again. Still, I shook my head. That's what mothers do, Rachel. We offer, we care, but you didn't have to shut me out completely. I tried, she said softly, but every time we spoke you corrected me. You told me what you did for your wedding, what you thought would be better. I know you were being kind, but it felt like I didn't have room to breathe. Her words stung. Not because they were cruel, but because there was truth tangled inside them. I'd done that, hadn't I? The little suggestions disguised as help, the comparisons I thought were harmless. Still, I couldn't let go of the other truth. You could have told me, Rachel. You could have said you needed space. Instead, you planned an entire ceremony behind my back. She looked down, voice quiet. Because I knew if we told you, you'd try to fix it. You'd convince Ethan we should include you, and he'd listen, because he loves you. The way she said it, because he loves you, carried a faint bitterness, like love itself was an inconvenience. I took a sip of coffee, my hands trembling just slightly. So instead, you convinced him to exclude me. Her eyes lifted again, and this time they were clear, unwavering. I convinced him to protect our peace. That was when I saw it. Not malice, not cruelty. Fear. Rachel wasn't trying to punish me. She was trying to control her own life before it got swallowed by someone else's expectations. It didn't make what she'd done right, but it made it make sense. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. You know, I said, I spent months wondering what I did wrong. I thought maybe you didn't like me. Maybe you thought I was too old-fashioned, too involved. But it wasn't that, was it? She hesitated, then shook her head. It wasn't dislike, it was self-preservation, I nodded quietly. Well, I suppose I can understand that. Her shoulders softened, just a little. I'm sorry, Maggie. Truly. I should have handled it differently. I just didn't know how to draw lines without hurting you. You drew them with a wedding ring, I said gently. She winced. Yes, I did. For a long moment we sat in silence. The cafe buzzed softly around us. Cups clinking, a milk steamer hissing somewhere behind the counter. I could hear my own heartbeat slowing. Finally, I said, I'm not here to fight, Rachel. I just needed to look you in the eye and understand. And now I do. You wanted peace. But peace built on secrecy doesn't last. She looked at me then, really looked, and something in her expression shifted. Maybe you're right, she said. I stood, gathering my purse. You're my son's wife now. That means whether you like it or not, we're family. I'll give you both the space you need, but don't mistake my silence for indifference. I'll always love him. And someday, I hope we'll all sit at the same table again. Rachel rose too. I hope so too. We exchanged polite smiles. Fragile, uncertain. But there was something else there too. Respect, however small. As I walked out into the autumn air, the wind caught the leaves and sent them swirling around my feet. The sky was pale and bright, like a clean page, and for the first time since that phone call, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, even if it came at a cost. The following weeks unfolded like a quiet echo. Each day I found a new rhythm, one where my phone didn't buzz with Ethan's texts, where Sunday dinners came and went with an empty chair, where silence became both comfort and punishment. But silence never lasts long in a small town. It began at the grocery store. I was reaching for a carton of milk when a voice behind me said, "Congratulations, Maggie." I saw the wedding photos. Beautiful. I turned, startled. It was Nora, one of the church ladies who never missed a thing. "Oh," I said, steadying my voice. "Yes, it was a lovely day for them." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I thought you'd be there, of course." "Must have been a private thing, "Something like that," I said, forcing a smile. By that afternoon, 3 more people had brought it up. At the post office, the gas station, even the choir director who said, "You must be so proud, even if it was unconventional." The word unconventional clung to me all evening, like a smudge I couldn't scrub off. By the end of the week, it was clear everyone knew I hadn't been invited. Not because I told them, but because Rachel had posted more photos, group shots now, showing every guest but me. A community like ours doesn't need gossip. It makes its own. Still, I kept my head high. I smiled. I baked pumpkin bread for the church fundraiser. But under that calm exterior, a question pulsed. How do you rebuild a bond that's been rewritten without your consent? The answer came sooner than I expected. 2 weeks later, I was setting out hymnals when Beth rushed in, breathless. "Maggie, I think you should know, Ethan's at the hardware store. He's been telling folks you're upset about not being invited, that it's causing tension. Just thought you might want to be aware." Tension. Such a simple word for what felt like heartbreak. That afternoon, I drove to the hardware store. I didn't plan a confrontation. I just needed to see him. Needed to know that the boy who used to bring me dandelions hadn't vanished entirely. When I walked in, the bell over the door jingled, and there he was, tall, handsome, carrying a box of nails. His face softened when he saw me. "Mom." "Hi, sweetheart." He wiped his hands on his jeans. You shouldn't believe everything people say. I don't, I said. But I do believe what I hear from you, he sighed. Mom, please don't make a scene. I almost laughed, not cruelly, just from the absurdity. I'm not here to make a scene, Ethan. I'm here to talk. Somewhere between your wife and this town, I seem to have become a story I don't recognize. He set the box down, rubbed the back of his neck. Rachel didn't mean for it to get out this way. She's embarrassed. She feels like everyone's judging her. Rachel feels judged? I said softly. She's not the one who's been whispered about in the frozen food aisle. He looked away. You're taking this too personally. Too personally? My voice caught on the words. Ethan, it is personal. You got married without your mother there. You let people believe I didn't want to come. And now you call that tension. The air between us was heavy. I could see his struggle, the tug of war between the man he wanted to be and the son he'd always been. He finally said, I made a choice, Mom. I needed to start my own life. Rachel and I were trying to build something new. You've got to let go a little. I took a long breath. I don't want to control you, Ethan. I just want to belong somewhere in the life you're building. Is that really too much to ask? His eyes softened. For a second, I saw my little boy again. The one who used to crawl into bed when thunder scared him. He whispered, I didn't mean to hurt you. I know, I said quietly. But you did! A clerk called his name from the counter. He nodded at me, as if to say later, but I knew there might not be a later. He had made his choice. As I turned to leave, I heard someone whisper behind me, Poor Maggie. That night, I sat in my living room, the glow from the lamp soft on the framed photos that now felt like relics. I realized something important. People could talk all they wanted, but I didn't owe anyone silence anymore. So when the church newsletter editor, a sweet young woman named Lila, called to ask if I'd like to contribute a short piece for the Thanksgiving issue, I said yes. I didn't write about betrayal. I didn't name names. I wrote about forgiveness. Sometimes the people we love will hurt us, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Fear of losing control, fear of being judged, fear of needing someone too much. But love, real love, waits for the storm to pass and keeps the porch light on. It wasn't a message to Ethan or Rachel directly, but everyone who read it knew. Within days, I received small notes tucked into my mailbox. Beautiful words. Maggie, so true. You're stronger than you know. And in that quiet way small towns have of correcting themselves, the whispers began to fade. Then one Sunday, as I was leaving church, I saw Rachel standing by the gate. Her coat was buttoned up to her neck, her hair pulled into a neat bun. She looked nervous. Hi, Maggie, she said. Hello, dear. I read your piece in the newsletter, she said, eyes down. It was lovely. Thank you. She hesitated, biting her lip. I didn't realize how much people were talking. I'm sorry for that. Small towns, I said gently. They talk because they care. She looked up then, eyes bright. Ethan's been feeling guilty. He wants to come by. Maybe next Sunday? Dinner, if that's okay. Something in my chest eased. That would be nice. She smiled, not the polite kind, but the real kind this time. I'll bring dessert. As she walked away, I realized it wasn't victory I felt. It was peace. Not perfect, not complete, but enough. Because sometimes justice doesn't look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like being remembered again. Sunday arrived slower than usual. It had rained the night before, and the morning light carried that soft silver gleam that makes everything look a little forgiven. The house smelled of rosemary and roasted chicken. I'd been cooking since 9, not out of obligation, but because the act itself calmed me. The rhythm of chopping carrots, the sound of broth bubbling, the warmth rising from the oven door. It had been months since I'd cooked for Ethan, months since the sound of his laughter had filled this kitchen. I set the table for 3, my fingers hesitating slightly on each plate. One for me, one for him, and one for the woman who had broken my heart and, perhaps unknowingly, taught me how to mend it. At 6:02 p.m., I heard the car pull into the driveway, the familiar crunch of tires on gravel. I wiped my hands on a towel and took a deep breath. When the doorbell rang, I opened it to find Ethan holding a bouquet of daisies, my favorite. and Rachel beside him, clutching a small pie tin wrapped in foil. "Hey, Mom," he said softly. "Hi." "Sweetheart," Rachel smiled, tentative but genuine. "Apple crumble," she said, lifting the tin. "I used your recipe. Ethan said it's your favorite." "It is," I replied, surprised at the gesture. "Come in." The warmth of the house seemed to soften the edges of our awkwardness. I led them to the dining table, where the candlelight flickered gently between us. Dinner began with small talk, work, the weather, how the new house they'd rented had a leaky faucet Ethan was definitely going to fix soon. I laughed at that. For a moment, it almost felt normal, but there were still ghosts in the room. Unspoken things hovering between the clink of silverware and the quiet sips of water. Halfway through dinner, Rachel set down her fork. "Maggie," she began, voice cautious, "I owe you more than just an apology. I owe you an explanation." I met her eyes. "You already gave me one," she shook her head. "No, that was self-defense. What I told you at the cafe about wanting peace, it was true, but it wasn't the whole truth." Ethan looked at her, startled. "Rachel, you don't have to—" She stopped him with a gentle hand. "Yes, I do." Then she turned back to me. "When Ethan and I first got engaged, I wanted you to like me so badly. You were kind, but you were also so certain, so sure of how everything should go. And I thought, if I didn't match your expectations, you'd think I wasn't good enough for him." I said nothing. "So I started pulling away," she continued. "And the more I pulled away, the more you tried to include me. I told Ethan it felt suffocating, but what I really meant was that I felt insecure. I thought you'd always be the woman he listened to, not me. That if I didn't take control of the wedding, I'd spend the rest of my life in someone else's shadow." Her voice wavered, just slightly. "And that's why I told him we should elope. I convinced myself it was about peace, but it was pride, fear." The room went still. Even the house seemed to hold its breath. Ethan reached for her hand, his thumb brushing her knuckles. He looked at me then, eyes full of remorse. I should have said no. I should have told her you deserved to be there. I was scared, Mom. Scared to make either of you unhappy. So I took the easy way out. I swallowed hard. And in doing that, you made both of us unhappy. He nodded. "I know." For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator and the rain beginning again outside, soft and steady. I looked at them. Two young people still learning how to love without wounding, how to choose each other without erasing others. I saw myself in them years ago, making mistakes of my own in the name of independence and pride. Finally, I said, "Marriage is complicated. You'll learn that soon enough. It's not about who has control. It's about who's willing to bend." Rachel's eyes glistened. "I'm sorry, Maggie, truly." I nodded slowly. "I believe you." And just like that, the heaviness in my chest began to ease. After dinner, Ethan helped me with the dishes, sleeves rolled up, laughing at how I still used the same floral sponge holder from his childhood. Rachel joined in, drying plates, humming softly to herself. When the kitchen was clean, she handed me a folded napkin. Inside was a small jewelry box. I frowned. "What's this?" "Open it," she said. Inside was my pearl necklace, the one I'd once imagined fastening around her neck. "I found it," Rachel said, voice trembling slightly. "In the box Ethan brought over after you gave him some of Dad's tools last month. I didn't realize it was yours until later. I thought it was a sign, that maybe it was time to give it back, or to accept it properly this time." The pearl glimmered under the kitchen light, simple, luminous, unassuming. I touched it lightly. It was meant for the day I gave my blessing to the woman my son loved. She smiled, small but full. "Then maybe it's time." My throat tightened. I unclasped the necklace, stepped forward, and fastened it around her neck. "There," I said softly. "Now it's exactly where it belongs." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. She hugged me, quick, unsure at first, then tighter. I held her, feeling something inside me settle. Ethan joined in, his arms wrapping around us both. For the first time in months, I felt whole. When they finally left that night, the rain had stopped and the world smelled clean again, like soil and new beginnings. I watched their car disappear down the street, then stood on the porch a moment longer, listening to the quiet. Inside, I cleared the table, blew out the candles, and sat down with a cup of tea. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt paused, like a song waiting for its next verse. And as the clock ticked softly in the living room, I thought about all the ways love can fracture, and all the ways it can heal if you let it. Because in the end, family isn't built on perfection. It's built on forgiveness. And that night, as I sipped my tea and stared at the raindrops clinging to the window, I realized I'd finally done both, forgiven them, and forgiven myself. When I lay in bed that night, the house was quiet again, but not the kind of quiet that hurts. The kind that hums softly, like peace finally taking a seat in the room. It's strange, isn't it? How love can wound us in the same breath it saves us. How we raise our children with every piece of our heart, only to one day watch them hand that heart to someone else. It's not betrayal. It's the rhythm of life. But it still stings when you first hear the beat. That night, I thought about Ethan's laughter at the dinner table, the way Rachel's hands had trembled when I clasped the pearl necklace around her neck. I thought about all the small, messy ways we learn to love one another, the misunderstandings, the pride, the soft apologies whispered too late but still worth something. I've learned that forgiveness isn't a single act. It's a practice. It's choosing, again and again, to leave the door open even when you've been shut out. Because one day, if you're lucky, the people you love will find their way back through it. As I drifted towards sleep, I whispered a prayer, not for the past to change, but for our hearts to stay open enough to keep growing, to love better, quieter, and with grace. And if you've ever been left out of a story you thought you'd belong to, a wedding, a secret, a decision that should have included you, remember this: you can still write your own ending. You can still choose peace. Would you have opened the door like I did? Tell me in the comments, my friends. And if my story touched your heart, stay a while, and let's keep sharing these lessons together. Because every family has a story. And every story deserves to be told.